Hi, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Chris, and I am your host. Joining me tonight are Dan.
Hey.
And Dean.
Four-time champion of the world! Yeah.
Our featured topic this evening comes via listener request. No, it's not the life and times of Marge DeFalco. No, this story is infinitely more complicated. For tonight, we talk all things Metal Gear. Welcome to the Stone Age Gamer. Good evening, everybody. This is episode 46 of the Stone Age Gamer podcast, and boy, do we have a special show tonight. As previously stated, tonight's topic comes to us via listener request because we have listeners. Dan?
Jason Solomon, our super fan, wrote me a message and said he was listening to one of our previous episodes and said, had to pause the show to officially request that you guys talk about Metal Gear for the entire podcast. And Jason, your wish is granted, my friend.
Ask and ye shall receive. Yes, we are going to talk entirely about Metal Gear, the entire franchise, tonight. We're going to cover every stinking Metal Gear game from beginning to end on this podcast tonight. Are you pumped?
I feel asleep.
I want to die.
The truck has started to move.
The truck have started.
It have.
Oh, God damn it.
It sure have.
It sure have.
All right, let's light up our cigarettes and crawl in a cardboard box, punch some dogs.
Punch some German shepherds in their stupid faces.
Just punch them until they disappear.
That's
how it works.
They weren't even shepherds. They were Doberman Pinschers.
Is that what they were?
Dr. Manhattan, you punch things till they just deatomize?
That's how it worked in Metal Gear. Speaking of which, let's start from the start. The original Metal Gear, released in July of 1987 in Japan for the MSX2, and then June of 1988 for the NES here in America, and August of 1990 for MS-DOS and Commodore 64. I'll just kind of jump right in and say that I did not know about the Japan-only Metal Gear for the MSX2 back when it came out. I didn't know that the MSX2 was even a thing. My first exposure to Metal Gear was Metal Gear for the NES, and granted, in hindsight, by comparison, this game does not favor well against the actual original Metal Gear, but without knowing of the original Metal Gear, I thought this game was amazing. It was a stealth game for the NES, for crying out loud, and there wasn't anything like it at the time. You start playing the game, and you just want to go around punching dudes and, playing it like an action game, and you very quickly realize that that's not what this game is about. You're supposed to hide. You're supposed to stay out of sight and sneak into places, and that was really, really freaking cool. And not only that, but the typos, are, as we mentioned earlier, are just legendary. They're
delightful.
They are quite delightful. One of the first characters you encounter in the game is a dude standing there. He's just standing there, and as you get close to him, he says, "I feel asleep." And then it looks like he starts smoking for some reason. Like,
yeah,
smoke just starts coming out of his head.
But he's asleep.
Or at least he feels that way.
And if you're like me, you stood there for like an additional 5 minutes going, what do I do? Because he's going to see me. I can't. He only feels asleep. He may not actually be asleep.
I stood there.
Dirty Nazi trick.
Exactly. I thought it could be some kind of trick, and then I was like, well, he's looking straight ahead. Maybe I'll sneak up on the side. And I did, and I very slowly inched up to him, and then I just punched him a couple of times until he disappeared.
Punched him 3 times in the face, which didn't wake him up because he feels very asleep.
Clearly, I knocked him out further by punching him in the side until he just disappeared.
Well, who falls asleep standing up?
Clearly, these gentlemen with
Parademons.
Outer Heaven. Parademons.
The working conditions in Outer Heaven are shit at best.
And the uniforms are very, very gray.
And shirtless, for some reason.
Shirtless. Oh man.
See, now it sounds like we don't like this game already, but I'm with you, Chris. Like, my first exposure to this game was walking through the video rental store and seeing the box and wondering why the hell the guy from Terminator was on the video game box. Because if you don't know, Kyle Reese or Michael Biehn from the very first Terminator movie, they just completely stole his likeness for Snake on the American box art. Like, It's just him. There he is. And I was like, oh, that's, like, I recognize that guy. Like, it accomplished, I guess, what they were going for. It drew me to it. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll check this out. And I rented this game and was completely blown away by it. Just absolutely bowled over, because it is so unlike anything that is on that platform.
And especially at the time. I mean, like, when this started up, it was, we just use you fire up the game, and the little gun next to the start and select your password or whatever. It even before it gets to the demo screen, like if you let it sit and go to the demo screen for a second, I think it jumps straight to you fighting the tank, like at almost the end of the game, which is weird. But when you press start, it does that whole the plane flying scene where you get dropped out of the plane. You and several other people apparently get dropped out of the plane. Never see or hear from for the rest of the game. And you just get dropped in the jungle, and it was like a very impressive, like visually impressive scene. There's a really similar scene in Ninja Gaiden, and I remember drawing that parallel a lot. I used to get confused sometimes, like which visual representation of stick figure coming out of a plane was from which game, because they're very similar scenes. But this one, and then you land in the woods, and as soon as you start up, it's got that thing that sound happening, call, and then you turn on your transceiver, and it's Big Boss talking to you, and this is your first introduction, at least for us who grew up in this era, who didn't start with Metal Gear Solid. This is where we met Gray Fox. This is where we met Big Boss, where we met Solid Snake, and this game created that mythology for us in a very interesting way. And I love it. I love it to death. The music is great. Really, really great NES soundtrack. Can't take anything away from how good the music turned out in this game. It's just wonderful. And it was Konami doing its thing back in the NES days. And it's not as good as the MSX2 game, but it's a damn good conversion. And it certainly was good enough for us at the time. Dean, what's your experience with this game? We haven't heard much from you.
Meh. So can I talk about the NES one?
Of course.
Okay, I thought we were more stuck on the MSX one, but
no, we're talking almost exclusively about the NES one.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I went back to that when I was way older, because when the NES first came out, I was a little on the young side, and
you were a zygote.
I was a little bit more than a zygote. I was an infant. I was close to a zygote. So
Marge taking care of you, not letting you play those violent games.
No, she didn't want me to turn out like the bad kids across the tracks. Anyway, I went back and played it, and I was like, I can't name one thing that this is like even close to. There's no other game like that during that generation. I was like, that's impressive that they started like this sort of genre of playing, and it was such an incredibly like eye-opening game. Because I don't know, this is gonna sound really terrible, but it was like watching the dinosaurs as if they were actually. It's like being in Jurassic Park for real. That didn't make any sense.
I get that, because this game laid this incredible foundation to where, like, it created a genre at a time when, I mean, lots of games created genres when the NES was out, because for as much as we may love the Atari and ColecoVision and all the other stuff that came before the NES, so much of what we know of gaming today is firmly rooted in the creativity of the people responsible for the NES franchises. And going back and playing the original Metal Gear, it's all there. Like, everything that is great about the Metal Gear Solid franchise is all there in that first one, from the stealth exploration, the acquiring of weapons once you're on site, the crazy story, the really cool enemies that are in there. I mean, like in
the
this first
weaponry,
game,
the way you use
Yeah.
items, like I mean,
the
the comedy of
interactivity
the
between
cardboard
things.
box, but I mean, like that was fucking clever as hell when this
it
came out.
was. And like,
The fact that you had cigarettes was all you landed with to start was a pack of cigarettes. Like, you're absolutely right. This game laid the foundation for what would become one of the most prolific game series and one of the most defining games of the 32-bit era.
I don't think there's another game on the NES that makes you do things like once you get the remote controlled missiles, there are certain sections of
just
the
going
game that you can't.
through rooms,
Yeah, like you
it's like
can't
2
get
rooms
across.
away, controlling a missile through a maze to blow up a control panel so you can walk on the floor.
So that you can unelectrify the floor.
Yeah,
Or
it's
the fact that
great
you have to
stuff.
use some of those against some of the bosses. I think it might be Coward Duck. It's either Coward Duck or Machine Gun Kid that you have to use the remote controlled missiles for, because if you try and do anything else, you will get obliterated. Like, the game very deliberately gives you the tools that you need. But what I always liked about it, and it's continued throughout the series, is that it doesn't necessarily spell out exactly what you need to do with the weapons. It just gives you the tools that you need and kind of lets you figure it out.
Yes, all of that. Yes.
Now, on the other side of the spectrum, so this came out in 1988 on the NES,
You're
and
gonna
it was
do it.
clearly a success.
How are you gonna do it?
Are
We're going to do it. We got to
Was
do
the-
all of them.
Was
Alright,
there a
let's-
ZX Spectrum version? Because that would have been an excellent segue.
No. The next time that Solid Snake appeared was in April of 1990 for the NES in Snake's Revenge. Now, this game gets a lot of flack, and a lot of it deservedly so. It is not a phenomenal game. It's not quite as bad a game as I think it is made out to be. It's just not a very good Metal Gear game. And I think it is most clearly exemplified by the very beginning of the game, when you're running through the jungle wearing fluorescent orange and just
Yeah.
shooting dudes. Because that's pretty much the opposite of a stealth a tactical espionage action game. Wearing bright orange, unless you're in a bright orange forest, it's not very stealthy.
I'll have you know, Raiden could pull off orange perfectly. Perfect.
None of you have ever been to outer heaven. Maybe it is bright orange. You don't know.
It's true, yeah. Maybe it is. We don't know. I never played through Snake's Revenge. I rented it once and was not as happy with it as I was the original Metal Gear. It was, it was, if I remember the story correctly, it was one of those, well, this game was incredibly successful, and they went to Kojima and said, do you want to do a sequel? And he was like, yeah, I don't know, maybe. And so they were like, all right, we're going to make a sequel. And then as they're like 90% of the way through making Snake's Revenge, he's like, yeah, you know what? I am making a sequel. It's going to be on the MSX, though. So,
Bitch.
Yeah.
but yeah.
It's not good.
no, it's not great. It's a neat curiosity. It's got some cool box art. But it is not part of the Metal Gear canon, as it were. But it's not as horrible as one would think. And if you're a Metal Gear completionist, you gotta have it. It's
Yeah.
gotta be a part of your collection because it happened.
It was just so damn disappointing.
It was. There was the Metal Gear set such a high bar. Like even then in 1988, you could tell that you were playing something special. And Snake's Revenge was just another game for the NES. It wasn't anything all that special. The only thing that makes it special is its ties to Metal Gear.
Right. If it was just called Snake's Revenge,
Which it
nobody
is.
would-
It's just called
well,
Snake's
yeah,
Revenge.
But I mean, like if it didn't have that Metal Gear tie,
Yeah, if it didn't have the pedigree, then
then
nobody
it would be largely
completely
ignored.
forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. It would be hanging out with Fortified Zone for the Game Boy. It's like, well, this is a decent action game that nobody cares about for the rest of forever.
Yeah, just ignored.
Just ignored. And speaking of just ignored, also in 1990, but not until July, on the MSX2 in Japan only, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, which was completely ignored by America because we didn't know it existed.
Yeah, we didn't get it.
We didn't get it. All we knew was Snake's Revenge. But it was eventually released as part of what is it? Metal Gear Solid 3.
Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence.
Yes. It was been released as part of that, and we finally got a chance to play it, and it's a pretty good game. I never got around to finishing this one. It just kind of ran out of time, I guess. It's on my list of things to do someday, but have either of you guys played through this one?
I have played through this. It is just as good as the original Metal Gear. I don't like it as much as the original Metal Gear, but I think that's mostly because I'm playing a game that came out in 1990 for the first time in 2006. And again, like Metal Gear, there are just some things about it that have not aged as well. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things. Going back and looking at it, it is an interesting curiosity, and the story is still there, and a lot of the stuff is still really, really good. But after you have already played Metal Gear Solid, it's kind of hard to go back to it if you don't have that built-in nostalgia.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I think that might be one of the reasons that I never really properly finished it, because I didn't have any real nostalgia for it, and I didn't have any real nostalgia for the MSX2, which is a shame because Konami apparently did a lot of really great stuff on the MSX.
Yeah.
That we just didn't see over here. Like, there's a whole different version of the first Castlevania for the MSX that incorporates some of that mapping stuff from later Castlevania games, even things that found their way into Simon's Quest. There's really cool stuff on that platform. I would love to get one, or even some sort of really good, proper, legal emulation for it or something, but
right.
Who knows? Hope for the future, I suppose. But yeah, Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake, that is a thing that happened and did not happen here in America. So 1990 was the year for sequels for Metal Gear, and then we didn't hear anything from the franchise for 8 years.
WTF, guys, show some love.
Exactly. It was, and this wasn't the only one that franchises like this used to disappear for a while. Like, Metal Gear was a big name, at least in my circles for NES games. Metal Gear was like just one of those NES games, and Super Nintendo goes by and nothing. Super Nintendo and Genesis, no Metal Gear, no, not so much as a peep out of it. And it's like, well, man, that kind of sucks that this franchise seems to be dead. But much like Metroid skipped over the N64 era and showed back up with Metroid Prime, in 1998, October of 1998, for the original PlayStation, Metal Gear Solid showed up and changed everything. Metal Gear Solid was a revelation in just about every way imaginable. Metal Gear Solid was unbelievable.
Slam dunk.
Yeah,
Slam dunk.
I would argue that in looking through the history of video games, that Mount Rushmore of gaming that has most definitely Super Mario Brothers on it, that most definitely has Tetris on it, I would argue that Metal Gear Solid is probably on that Mount Rushmore as well.
I would think so. I mean, of that entire generation, of the entire 32/64-bit generation, the two games that stick out to me as like the defining games of that generation are Metal Gear Solid and Ocarina of Time. And they both came out relatively close to one another in the grand scheme of things. Like, think about what two more influential games, with the exception of maybe Mario 64, like, those are two of the juggernauts that are looked back on incredibly fondly, and two of the very, very few games from that era that still hold up by today's standards. Like, Metal Gear Solid has aged surprisingly well, and so has Ocarina of Time. And I think it comes from one thing that both of those games did that a lot of other games did not, was that Metal Gear Solid and Ocarina of Time don't have CG in them. They don't mess around with that. Metal Gear Solid in particular owned the platform that it was on so much better than most other games did. And even when they like remastered it, even when they refer to the game in future games, Snake still looks like that hideous polygonal creature in that game because it worked. They treated the polygons in that game the same way that Nintendo treated their sprites way back in the day. How like you can still look at that 8-bit sprite of Mario and it's still referenced in new games. And same thing with Link. All those that sprite work still looks good by today's standards. Metal Gear Solid is one of the very few instances where they owned that polygonal, blocky graphic style, and it worked for what it was. It really did.
You're absolutely right. I mean, like you go back and look at some of those original PlayStation games or N64 games, things of that era, and they are damn near unplayable.
Hideous.
They're just so bad. I mean, even things that we were absolutely just blown away by, like walking through the mall and seeing the demo disc for Final Fantasy VII on one of those TVs with the speakers on it that folded out, which I'm sure you know the name of, Chris.
GXTV.
The GXTV, absolutely. What? Walking by and seeing the first, like, the Leviathan summon for Final Fantasy VII was like, oh my, I have seen Jesus's eyes.
I have reached the top of the mountain.
I have reached the goddamn mountaintop. And if you go back and play Final Fantasy VII now, it is hideously ugly.
Yeah, it's a lot of that.
It's
CG
so
backdrop, polygonal graphics on top of it. I've never been a huge fan of that game to begin with, and
well, you're wrong.
Remember,
but
it was one of the reasons I bought a PlayStation. I walked into the electronics boutique in the Hamilton Mall, and I said, I'm ready to buy a PlayStation. Should I buy Castlevania Symphony of the Night or Final Fantasy VII? And the guy, Wes, behind the counter, gave me the best advice in the world and said, buy Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And I did, and it's still one of my favorite games to this day. But I eventually bought Final Fantasy VII not that long afterwards, and I have tried to play through that game several times, and I've never made it to the end because it is deeply flawed from a storytelling perspective, which is why I want to play that game. Like, I am interested in the whole Cloud Sephiroth thing.
No, let's not do it. Let's not have this conversation. We're going down a dark path.
Yes, we're going down a dark path. This is a podcast for another podcast.
I have, however, beat both Ruby and Emerald, and that made me really happy when I was much younger, because that was like a thing. But no, but back to your point though.
Wait, what? What just happened?
In Final Fantasy VII, the Ruby weapon and the Emerald weapon that are like really, really crazy hard to beat. Like,
I thought you were talking about Pokemon.
Thing. Yeah, I'm like, what does this have to do with fucking Final Fantasy?
What the hell is he talking about?
No, Ruby weapon, Emerald weapon, like they're really difficult, and you have to fly around and fuck both of you.
Whatever, fucking admitted beating both Pokemon games. You were so happy about it too.
No, you got to do Knights of the Round, and you got to.
I know.
Knights of the Round.
It makes sense now, but
okay, all right.
I'm gonna take your fucking word for it. I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's okay. It's really hard. I promise. It's like almost unfairly hard. But back to your point. Looking back at Metal Gear now, you're right. It still holds up. The backgrounds still hold up. The way the characters move still hold up. The gameplay still holds up. It is so fucking perfect.
It is.
Metal Gear Solid. Say what you will about what has come after that, and I know that we have some differing opinions, specifically about things like Metal Gear Solid 4, like once you get to that point. But Metal Gear Solid is a perfect game. There is nothing that should be changed about it. The story is so much more in depth than it ever had been, but was told in a way like you were finally. The first time you play Metal Gear Solid, you feel you felt back then anyway, as if you were controlling a movie for the very, very first time, and has gone on to I really think influence damn near every game that has come after it.
It definitely revolutionized storytelling in games, but what I really appreciated about it from a storytelling perspective was that like I was a fan of Metal Gear, but working at Funco Land at the time when this game came out, I knew that a large portion of the customer base that was buying Metal Gear Solid had never played Metal Gear before. So this game worked on that level, as in complete newcomers, but it had this whole extra layer to it for people like us that had played Metal Gear and knew about the treachery of Big Boss. Like, we went through that. We rescued Gray Fox, and it didn't even seem like a big deal. He was just like a dude in a chair that was tied up in ropes, and you saved him. His name is Gray Fox, and he gets out. Like, these things happen to us, and the fact that this game referenced all that stuff so well and so intelligently that, oh god, that was that extra layer that was added to it for people who grew up with that franchise was brilliant. And not only that, like speaking of brilliance, the way that this game sometimes literally thought outside the box in ways
Yeah.
that made you solve puzzles, like saying that you had to get Meryl's codec off of the back of the box, like the actual back of the game case.
Yeah, which took me fucking forever to figure out. Like, I'm not ashamed to admit that. I was like, back of the box. What are you taught? Like, so I start looking at cardboard boxes, and I'm looking around every box that I could think of, and then like finally, you just in one of those, you just throw the CD case down when you put the game in, and you look at the back, and you're like just mindlessly flipping through it, and you're like, oh, her codec's right there on the back of the CD case. Son of a bitch, bastard Kojima. You're so clever.
It actually hit me a little bit faster because not that long before it, I was a really big fan of Star Tropics for NES. And Star Tropics has a similar situation where the game comes with, attached to the back of the instruction manual, a letter from your uncle in the game. And you get to this point in the game where it says the little robot Navcom is telling you you need the code to get the submarine started, subsea started. The code is hidden in your uncle's letter that you have to dip in water. And you're like, in your uncle's letter, so you go through the inventory in the game, you're like, no, I don't have a letter from my uncle. Oh, you don't mean the letter on the back of the instruction manual. And so you take that letter off the back of the instruction manual, and it says a little note on the top of it, this is important, don't throw this away. And you
Really, we promise.
physically dunk it in water. You physically wet that paper, and the numbers 747 megahertz is hidden in the paper that you can only see when you get it wet, and that's the code to start it. And for some reason that was just stuck in my head. I was like, they can't be doing the Star Tropics thing here. And I picked up the big game case. I was like, Meryl, look at that. Holy shit. Who was it? 101 point, not 101.5. What the hell was her codec?
That's
Power 105?
B101.5.
Yeah, that's B101.5.
Big shout out to B101.5, the greatest
Big
hits of the 70s,
fans.
80s, 90s, and today.
Big fans of the show. But yeah, stuff like that, stuff like Psycho Mantis, reading the memory cards and switching controller ports, like, this game was the very definition of brilliant. And
Well, and what I really appreciated it, because it's late.
appreciated it.
What I really appreciated about it was one of the things that I never picked up on in the original Metal Gear, because I was like 8 when I first played it, was the story that is being told is a for real serious deep story about some things that Kojima is very passionate about, of de-arming the planet and nuclear devastation being a very real fear that we all have to really kind of worry about. And this game taking place in a nuclear weapons disposal facility, and having DARPA and just like these real life concerns and global politics baked down into this video game was like, this is taking itself seriously and telling me a story based on certainly a fictionalized version of what could happen, but this shit could happen. Like, this isn't all that far off from reality. And I would like realizing that, and then thinking back to what I had played, I was like, oh, this is some heavy shit. this is some real storytelling.
I agree. It was something. It was very, very in depth. I remember going to school and being like genuinely concerned about how the heck was I going to figure out, like, I was concerned about Meryl getting shot by that sniper rifle. Like, I was genuinely concerned, and I had to go to school, and I'm thinking all day long, what the hell am I going to do? Every time I move, they shoot either me or her. Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And the game did a really great job of that, but...
And the fact that Meryl can die.
Yeah.
Like, you can go through the game, and, you know, the big moment in Final Fantasy VII is when... spoilers. When fucking Ares is killed. You know, it's like, oh my god, it's this unbelievably heart-wrenching moment in the game because you care so much about the little flower girl who's there helping you on your journey, and she just wants, you know, yeah, like, oh, right in the feels, man. And then you play through Metal Gear Solid, and you're like, oh god, I let her die. This isn't something the game did. I made this happen because I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't able to save her. And that's, again, some heavy shit to throw at a video game. But you're right, it had that emotional connection to the game that all of a sudden I cared so much more about what was going on. And when I find out that the ninja is Gray Fox, like, just blown away, you know? Oh god, I love this game so much. This is
mind equals blown. Dean, you got anything to chime in with on Metal Gear Solid?
I was still a little young when that came out. That was my I'm gonna pick it up and play it, and it didn't work out too well. I was more of a Spyro kid.
Fair enough.
Sorry, I apologize. I played it, but it was a little far after the fact, and all the stuff that you guys were talking about with like Psycho Mantis, and a lot of the story was cool because this kind of the whole story made more sense after playing Metal Gear Solid 2 first and not playing 1 before that. I had to go back because 2 didn't make a lick of fucking sense if you didn't know anything about this beforehand.
No,
it made no sense, and it hurt my head, and I thought it was a terrible game, and everyone kept telling me I was fucking crazy, so I had to go back, and I had to play the first one, because for God's sakes, if I was the only person that thought that was a bad game, I was going to go insane.
Well, before we get to that point, moving on from Metal Gear Solid, because this is turning into a long one, but obviously there's a lot to say about Metal Gear Solid. Shortly after Metal Gear Solid, there was a VR missions expansion pack, which was cool. But the next real release came in May of 2000 with Metal Gear Solid, or Metal Gear Ghost Babel, for the Game Boy Color. In May of 2000, they made a Metal Gear Solid for the Game Boy Color, and it was magnificent. Have either of you guys played this?
I have. This is the one that I haven't played.
I have not played that. Surprise!
I have this game. I have played through the bulk of it. It is astonishing. I remember picking it up just out of sheer, like, holy crap, they made Metal Gear Solid for Game Boy Color. It's kind of like an alternate timeline story. It doesn't fit in with continuity. It kind of retells the story of Metal Gear Solid, but just with a totally different plot and everything. But the gameplay of it is a cross between modern Metal Gear Solid and the original Metal Gear. Like, this is an extraordinarily competent Game Boy Color game. It is really, really cool. The visuals are exactly as colorful as you would need them to be to work for a Game Boy Color game, but not so much that it looks stupid. The animations are really well done. The stealth aspect of it is great. You can still, like, hug against walls and whatnot, and it's really, really good. And I'm surprised that Konami hasn't put it on anything yet as a re-release, because it's a very highly regarded game, and it deserves every ounce of praise that it got, because it's one of the more complex and intelligent Game Boy Color games that exist. Like, it is really, really, really a, no pun intended, solid game. And I can't recommend it enough.
What kind of game? I'm sorry.
Solid.
Okay.
It was worth repeating. All right. Well, speaking of crazy, November of 2001 for the PlayStation 2, Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. Now, if you weren't coherent or really paying attention when this came out, Metal Gear Solid lit the friggin' world on fire. And then a game called Zone of the Enders came out, and included with Zone of the Enders was a demo disc for Metal Gear Solid 2, which was crazy high on the hype train. But this demo disc shot it into the stratosphere because this demo was amazing. To this day, Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of the best looking games on the PS2. I don't know what the heck happened with Kojima's team, but they were able to just squeeze so much out of the PlayStation 2 so early in its life, and that very few games were able to top it, visually speaking. But the demo, you were Solid Snake, you run around on this ship. It was a more refined version of Metal Gear Solid. It was what you wanted out of a sequel to Metal Gear Solid. It was bigger and better in every way. The controls were great, the gameplay was great, the visuals were stunning, the story seemed extraordinarily interesting, everything was phenomenal, and then it just ends, because it's a demo, and all you wanted to do was play this game. Just, oh my god, give me this game, I want every piece of it that can be imagined. And the game comes out. You finally get the game, you take it home, you crack it open, you play through the beginning of the game, which is pretty much exactly the same thing as the demo that you played. But then you get to the end of the demo, and the game was just like, fooled you! And
JK.
some punk, blonde moron, whiny idiot named Raiden is running around in a weird-looking outfit, and the game just goes bananas. Like,
Well,
you're
at
not
first
Solid?
he's running around with no outfit.
None at all.
You're like, why am I a naked blonde guy?
You're not Solid Snake. You're this whiny, unlikable waste character.
Wow.
hate Raiden. I hate this character. You're playing through this game, and you meet Pliskin, as he's calling himself, just because you can't have enough callbacks to, what was it, Escape from L.A. or whatever.
And Escape from New York.
Escape from New York. New York was the first one, right? Not the... Which one was the one that like he made years later that was bizarre?
I think L.A. was later.
L.A. was the later one. Either way, you're Kurt Russell, and he's obviously he's linking himself to that even more. And you're running around in this game, and it's what's going on. The story just keeps getting stranger and stranger as time goes on, and it's not what anyone expected. It was such a curveball, and a brilliant curveball at that. Like, this was sheer genius, because they released this demo that was this Trojan horse. Like, you want this game, you want this game, and then they get it in your house, and then you finish that part that's the demo. It's just like, yeah, you thought you were buying this one game, but you didn't. You're buying something completely different, and it is bananas. It is, to quote Dean, pumpkin to a gunfight bananas.
Well, and the fact that, because in 2001, internet proliferation was not nearly what it is today, but it was still around, and the fact that they were able to keep that shit a secret.
Yeah.
That it was never leaked. That
no one
you
saw
were
that
not
coming.
going to be that character was... It's astonishing that happened, because I don't think that could happen now.
No, definitely not. I mean, they can't even keep Smash Brothers characters a secret anymore.
Right.
But I mean, this whole experience, like, it's a good game, but it's very strange. Like, I know Kojima really wanted to do this bit where it was like, no, you're still playing a video game, and he kind of took that pretty far with some of the weird things that happen towards the end of the game, where you're doing cartwheels buck naked, and the screen's all bugging out, and the colonel is talking to you, like, quoting the original NES crappy translation and stuff like that. Like, it was very strange. And then the whole ending of this game was like, So you're fighting these you're fighting some characters, and then like they jump into Metal Gear and fly away, and this other character comes up and says like, that guy over there, he thought he was in charge of the whole thing, but really I'm the ringleader this whole time, and he didn't know about it and you didn't know about it, and now I'm gonna go off and take over the world. See you later. And then he runs away, and then some other dude pops out and be like, those two assholes, they think they're doing everything, but I was really in charge the whole time. Fooled everybody. Peace out. And then I think another guy comes out and does the same thing. It's just like all those guys. See, now this guy thinks that this guy's doing it, and this guy thinks that this other guy's in charge, and then that other guy, well, I don't even know what he's thinking about, but I was in charge of the whole thing the whole time. Peace out, bitches. And by the time you're done, you're like, what in the hell is going on? And then there was like some dude named Solidus who looked like Dr. Octopus with rocket-powered rollerblades or some crap. You get into a sword fight with him, and then there's like
He had
a
so
bunch
many
of
swords.
yes, and then there's a bunch of live action footage of like people in a park and Solid Snake soliloquizing about like the
Save America and the environment.
Save
and
America and
Native
the
Americans.
Patriots
Fucking
and whatever.
God.
And when the whole thing was done, it was like, what the fuck did I just play?
Where did that part come from? I'm sorry, I've been holding that in for 10 years, but what the fuck was that? I'm sorry, it didn't make any sense. It's there, and I'm just staring at the screen, and I'm like, really? This is what I get? 25 hours? And this?
Didn't I beat this game 45 minutes ago? What am I still doing here? This is so far off the rails, I didn't even know what rails look like anymore. I don't know if I can spell the word rails. This is how far off the rails things have gotten. What in the world happened?
You were in the parking lot, it was so left field. Fuck.
It is a sharp turn out of the realm of sense and into and what I love about it, and I do love it, but what I love about it is
I love this game. I don't want anyone to think that I don't, because I look back on this game very fondly, but boy do I have some problems with it. It
is purely Kojima's vision. Like, this is a game that, because he had built up such a cachet at Konami, he was like, nah, fuck you. This is what I'm doing. This is what's going to happen. This is my story. I'm going to tell it how I see fit, and you're all going to love it because I'm better at this than all of you. And he's right. He is. The one issue that I have with the game is that, it's a lot easier in 2015 to look back at the game and be like, well, they shouldn't have changed things because of the terrorist attacks. But significant portions of this game were changed due to the terrorist attacks in North America. The bombing of the destruction of the Twin Towers significantly affected the ending of this game, and a lot of things that were going to happen in the game that I don't know if they would have made the game make any more sense, but the iconography that would have been presented had things not been changed would have been certainly an interesting thing, and looking back at it so much later, so many years later, I would like to see those original things back in the game.
Yeah, I would be very curious to see what those pieces were that were eventually cut out of the game, but I really don't think that it would have made the game make any more sense, because
probably not.
It is batshit loco. But speaking of batshit loco, on a completely different kind of batshit loco, for reasons unknown to pretty much everybody on the planet, in March 2004, Konami, Silicon Knights, and Nintendo teamed up to remake the original Metal Gear Solid, which wasn't that old, for the GameCube, with Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes. I own this game. I loved it when I bought it. I still love this game. It's bananas.
It's weird.
Yeah,
weird.
It's weird. They took the gameplay elements of Metal Gear Solid 2, for whatever reason, applied it to Metal Gear Solid 1, because that game needed a remake just a few years later, and put it on the GameCube, where nobody was really itching for a Metal Gear game, and if they were, it wasn't a remake of a game they've already played. But they did it. They did this anyway.
It was there.
They went ahead and hired Silicon Knights to handle all the in-game stuff, and then they went. Kojima Productions redid all of the cutscenes, which is really cool because they're insane.
Because it's the Matrix.
Because there's a scene where Snake jumps off of a moving rocket and fires another rocket at the helicopter that shot the rocket at him.
So it's like when Bruce Willis kills a helicopter with a car?
Yeah, kind of like that.
Okay.
Oh my god. But I loved this game so much because it was like it did one of those great things that Kojima likes to do and really embrace the architecture. Like, it screwed with your head again with the whole, like, you know, Meryl's codec number being on the outside of the box, but the way it handled, like, Psycho Mantis was great because the GameCube's got 4 controller ports, and you have to use all 4 of those ports to take him down.
Yes,
'Cause I remember moving it into controller port 2, and he's like, that's not going to work. I'm like, well, fine, I'll try number 3. You had to keep switching between all 4 of them. He'd read your memory card and bring up, like, if you played Eternal Darkness because the Silicon Knights connection, or like Super Mario Sunshine, and, you know, little Marios and Yoshis were hidden throughout the game and you could shoot them and get little one-up sound effects. Like, there is so much.
There's some very cute things in there.
There are.
Which is a weird thing to say about a Metal Gear game, but there's some, like,
in there.
oh, that's cute.
Yeah, and this game was so unnecessary. It was the remake that nobody asked for, and it's a really cool piece of Metal Gear history. But what the hell? Like, what in the hell? Because I mean, guys know me. I am just a lunatic Nintendo apologist. I love Nintendo to death, and I remember, they're finally putting a Metal Gear on a Nintendo console, which felt right to me because my experience with Metal Gear was Nintendo and then PlayStation, and I'm like, well, there's no reason Metal Gear shouldn't be on a Nintendo console, so why not? Oh, a remake of Metal Gear Solid. What the fuck? I mean,
Why,
Metal
damn
Gear
it?
Solid for Game Boy Color was so damn good. Why aren't I getting, like, I would have loved a crazy reimagining of Metal Gear Solid in that same way. Like,
Right.
just something else that was not just a retread of the exact same game with better graphics and playability. Like, give me something special. Give me something truly unique. And I mean, there were some great things, like really legit great things, like the whole bit where you see the cyborg ninja killing the shit out of those guys in the hallway as opposed to just walking up a hallway full of blood. Like, man, that shit was visceral. Like, that was awesome. But there you go. Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes for the GameCube. Big old question mark. Nobody knows why it exists, but hey, it's there.
Well, they didn't go with their other game. It's Crazy Taxi and Metal Gear. Crazy Gears. You're
Crazy
just blowing
Gears.
shit up. You're not picking anybody up.
Taxi
You're
Gear
murdering the
Solid.
entire town.
Stealth
Yes.
taxi driving.
I love it.
Well, and as weird as that sounds, that is about as weird as the minigame that is in the next game we are going to talk about.
Yeah, was that where the skateboarding one was, or was that in the?
Oh no, I'm not talking about the skateboarding one.
Because there was a skateboarding minigame that was related to Sons of Liberty, though, right? That was one of
Yes.
the. Oh God.
Oh no, I am talking about Snake versus Monkey.
That was fun.
In November 2004, for the PlayStation 2, to try to get the game back on the rails, we have a game with some of the most impressive trailers in the history of mankind: Metal Gear Solid 3: Snake Eater. Dan, why don't you talk us about this? Why don't you talk about this one?
It has by far the best theme song of any of the Metal Gear games. It is a James Bondian theme song with just this incredibly soulful singer just belting out Snake Eater. Like, and the fact that this came out after things like Austin Powers had come out made it funny when it shouldn't have been funny, because it wasn't fucking trying to be funny. It was trying to be a throwback to the Bond type movies, but it's oh god, it's just such a great song.
It's a great song, but I gotta give the shout to the original Metal Gear Solid theme song, especially the version in Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance that plays over the intro. I mean, I love Snake Eater, don't get me wrong, but that is the best theme song for Metal Gear Solid, in my opinion.
I don't know, man.
It's so good. That song is gorgeous, and action, and it's everything you want. Anyway, sorry, go on. Metal Gear Solid 3.
So, Snake Eater, to me, is the best of the Metal Gear Solid games. And what I found really interesting about it was the fact that we had gone through the story of Solid Snake, and we had seen where he had come from. And for those of us that started on the NES, this had been a many, many year journey that we had gone on with this character. But we always knew that there was this backstory of the legendary soldier Big Boss. And you had heard about his exploits and the things that he had done that just made him seem like such a badass. And it was Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater is announced, and it's going to take place in the 60s and 70s. And you're like, oh, I'm gonna get to be Big Boss. This is amazing. I'm gonna get to be Big Boss. I'm gonna get to find out and do all the legendary shit that I had heard of. And I thought that was just such a cool thing, and instantaneously had me hooked into this game. The fact that I was gonna get to do the stuff that the other characters had talked about just seemed so awesome to me. One of the big, controversial things when this game was coming out was that they were changing the camera angle.
Oh, yeah, to a top view.
Right, instead of being the sort of isometric view that you had previously, you were getting kind of a top view, but sort of behind the shoulder as well, sort of thing. Like it's a very strange camera angle that you get there. And it completely changed the way that the game was played. They threw in things like the camouflage system, where you could now blend into your surroundings and you could find new camouflages, and that was really cool. You could treat your injuries, you could eat the snakes that you found and like other shit within the world. Like, you became a survivalist as well as this incredible like stealth soldier. It like just completely changed the way that the game was played. The story in this one, the ending scene where you are fighting your mentor, that kind of that trope of the student becoming the master is fought in a field of white flowers. And if you are anything like me, when you played this game, you felt bad knowing that you were going to have to kill your teacher, the person that you respected the most in the world. You were going to have to take her out. And there was such an emotional just thump in that moment. It was just beautiful. It was so beautifully done. It just completely floored me when I played it.
Yeah, that was a pretty poetic moment, I gotta say.
This whole game had a lot of experiences like that. I mean, just think about the end. Like, the sniper dude. That boss battle can go on for hours if you want it to.
Yeah, and like, eventually he might just die of old age.
You can keep that shit going until he just dies. He just stops being alive, which is crazy. Yeah, I agree with you that this is probably the best of the Metal Gear Solid games. I have never finished it myself. I got a good chunk of the way through it and found myself frustrated, a bit frustrated with it. I was fighting with the game a little bit too much to play it, and then they announced Metal Gear Solid Subsistence, and I wound up getting that and started playing through that, which had they fixed some of the camera angle things. They streamlined a few things. Like, it was a really good enhancement, kind of an update to it, which would just be DLC nowadays, but that didn't really exist on PS2.
No, and Subsistence would be the version to get.
Yeah, it's very good, and but I just never got around to finishing it because this is a complex game. Like, there's a lot to take into consideration when playing this game. It's the stealth aspect of it is very complicated, and it's good. It is smart. This game is very good, very smart. It's got that crazy Kojima aspect to it, but not to the extent of Metal Gear Solid 2, where your head is spinning, saying what the fuck is going on. Like, it's still a little, bug nuts crazy. It's got great little bits where you're like, if you kill Revolver Ocelot, it creates a time paradox and you get a game over, which is genius. Oh, so good.
It is pretty brilliant. Well, and I think that was one of the things too, is that Kojima had to kind of Kojima. I'm not really sure the way we're supposed to pronounce it.
Smith.
Mr. Smith, Hideo Smith, kind of had to rein in his storytelling because things had gotten so crazy by the end of Metal Gear Solid 2 that with this story being a prequel, we had to start getting some of the explanation for who these people were. So you start to learn things about the philosopher's legacy and the Les Enfants Terribles and all that shit. And you start to get some of this backstory that makes the previous games, it makes them make more sense, which is really kind of nice because the story at this point is so insanely complex.
I agree, man. Yeah, that story is pretty insane when you think about it. I mean, the whole game is just it made me feel better about what 2 did to me.
Well, and you get this is the game where Big Boss loses his eye, and the way the camera moved changed a little bit once you only had one eye, which I thought was pretty interesting. There's just some really intense storytelling moments in this. That ending scene alone, when Snake is fighting the boss, which is what she's known as, before you are awarded the title of Big Boss, when you are just fighting the boss in the Field of Flowers, it's just one of the weirdest things I've ever played in a game, because it does not play anything like damn near any other final boss fight that you will ever play in a game. And it is incredibly poetic, and the storytelling is just so powerful that it's an achievement. When you look at this game, it's like, well done, sir. You have done something different. You have made a statement with this game.
Yeah, no, I agreed, man. Certainly.
Yeah, spot on. Well, we are, in fact, running very long here, but we're going to plow through this stuff. So we're going to take ourselves a quick break. We're going to reinvigorate, and then we're going to rapid fire through the last 10 years of Metal Gear Solid. So, stick around. And now, here's a look at some of the other original content available right now at Geekade.com.
First up, Geekade welcomes the Apathetic Enthusiasm podcast to our ranks. For their 10th episode, Brandon and Travis discuss Star Wars and rhythm games. Not that the two should ever meet. Never forget, Star Wars Connect. Ugh.
Well, next, Chris's adventure through Pokemon Blue continues. And he may be starting to lose his mind. Why should he have to pay $1 million for a bike? Who the heck is Bill? Check out the Pokemon Appreciation Day 194 in Think Tank.
Everyone likes beards. Everyone should like hockey. But what beer goes best with both? Hunter suggests it might not be what you think. Check out the new issue of Imbibing Scribes, Playoff Beards, and Michelob Lager?
We did a live podcast of the Waveback... We did a live episode of the Waveback Music Podcast the other night, and if you missed it, fear not. The recording is on our website for your listening pleasure. Join Chris and DJ Vestlord, psst, that's Dean, on a musical journey through the world of Mega Man X.
It's so cool. that music is so good. Anyway, there's a whole new definition for the abbreviation of AVP, and that is Archie versus Predator. What happens when everyone's favorite murdering alien meets the Riverdale gang? Also, Dan continues to read Convergence, so you don't have to.
You're welcome.
Yes, don't miss Paper Cuts, issue 31. You can catch all of this, plus tons of other original podcasts, articles, and videos exclusively at geekade.com. Alright, and we have returned from our cardboard box hiding places. Now, we're going to take on the Metal Gear releases of the last 10 years. Let's jump right in, which is clearly all of our favorite game in the franchise. March 2005, the PSP is out. We're all ready to play our first portable, proper Metal Gear Solid game, Metal Gear Acid, and it's a fucking card game.
So bad.
Not good.
So bad. It's not even a good card game.
Like, it's a decent card game, but it's a
Nope,
shitty
it's not.
Metal Gear game.
It's the worst.
No, it's not the worst.
And they made another one.
And that's the worst. Because while the 2005 Metal Gear Acid is pretty crappy, Metal Gear Acid 2 takes it to a whole new level. Because it looks like it's on acid in this time. The first one had kind of a pseudo, I guess, like an outline of the characters, almost leaning towards some cell shading. I don't know. It was something. But, Jesus. Acid 2, he's wearing fluorescent purple, and everything's all
so
neon,
bad.
and ugh.
Why do you think they called it acid, motherfuckers?
Oh god. So yes, Metal Gear Acid 1 and 2, PSP. So not doing great out the gate. Yeah, PSP.
Don't play them.
Don't bother. Don't bother.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. So, in the continued, for some odd reason, love of the PSP, Konami launches yet another Metal Gear Solid game. This time, they're going to get it right. This time, it's going to be a proper Metal Gear Solid game with Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, except it's not. It's a multiplayer-only shoot fest. So
Yep, still not
yeah,
good.
still not great. So there you go, December 2006. We're our third PSP Metal Gear game, and it's still not what we want. So what are we going to do? We're going to try again. The next Metal Gear game that comes out is November of 2007, exclusively for the PSP. This time, even better than the original Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops Plus, except again, it's not. It's more of the same, a little bit cleaner, I guess a little bit more fun, but it's basically just multiplayer stuff. It is not the Metal Gear experience on the road. So far, our closest to that is the Game Boy Color game.
It was plus a bunch of shit you don't want to do.
Pretty much.
The name is as bad as New Super Mario Brothers.
It really is. Portable Ops? Really? Really, guys?
Portable Ops Plus?
Ugh.
Come on.
Knock it off. Just do it.
Ugh.
So.
Oh, but wait, it gets better.
Oh, it does get better.
Stop.
Oh, it gets better. Because March 2008, for mobile devices, Metal Gear Solid Mobile. But it gets even better. Because as interesting as Metal Gear Solid Mobile is, in December of 2008, Metal Gear Solid Mobile was released on the N-Gage.
Ooh, the taco
Yep.
phone.
It's all about
Making
that
a comeback,
side
N-Gage.
ducking.
Now, kids, for those of you listening, and you should be in bed, it's past your bedtime, but the N-Gage was fucking stupid. It was if you could imagine a taco, like a hard-shelled taco, that you put way too many buttons on and a screen, and then realized that after you had designed the video game portion of your phone/video game system, you had forgotten to put anywhere to fucking talk on the goddamn thing. So you figured, I know, I'll just put it on the side, like where a regular phone would maybe have like its power button or its volume buttons. Nope, you had to hold the side of the phone to your head and look like an asshole. And that's why no one owned one.
What Dan just mentioned was that on the side was where the speakers were to talk and listen to things like a phone. So since the side of the console was taken for that purpose, there was nowhere to put the games. So you have to actually unscrew the back of the console to switch games. That's how.
But that just means they're extra safe.
Yes, they are, in fact, extra safe and extra shitty. The Nokia N-Gage, one of the worst game consoles / phones in the history of the human race. Metal Gear Solid Mobile, I don't know much about. Dan, do you know anything about this game?
No, I'm not an asshole. I didn't have an N-Gage.
So, there you go.
I worked at a GameStop while they were out, and I laughed at people that bought them. Like, what are you doing?
What are you doing? What is this? What are you thinking?
Stop it.
Get a Motorola Razr, you ass. What do you? Come on now. That's the new hotness, not the N-Gage. Nobody buys Nokia phones anymore. Ugh.
So,
Actually,
no, go
I'm
ahead.
sure.
Go ahead.
Do you have a Nokia phone?
well, the Lumia was like a huge. You know what? Nope. Let's stay on track. Let's stay on track.
Yes, let's stay on track. We're blowing through these rapid fire because we've blown an awful lot of time in the first segment. But before we move on, I will embarrassingly admit that I own a Nokia N-Gage. I will say that I
Yeah, you
did
do.
not pay for it. I found it. And I was so happy to find it because as a lunatic collector, I always knew I wanted to have one. I guess I had to have this curiosity. Just like I really want to have a Gizmondo someday because what the hell was that thing? But
We're gonna have to make a deal with the devil for that.
I
one.
was managing a GameStop and I was cleaning out the desk, which was just filled with years and years of old paperwork that should have been thrown away. And as I'm rooting through the desk, I come across a Nokia N-Gage that was like the store demo unit from way back in the day, and I got to keep it because there was nothing to do with it. It was supposed to have been returned years and years ago, and it wasn't. It was just sitting there, and it was mine. So thank you, GameStop, for being a horrible job and giving me a Nokia N-Gage.
Did you get Madden along with it? Because, man, I can't imagine anything worse than side talking on my Madden player.
Delicious. No, my Nokia N-Gage
Gross.
collection consists of 3 whole games, 2 of which have never been opened. I got from somebody that I met at the comic book store I used to work at, who just like knew I collected games. Said, "Hey, here's Ghost Recon Jungle Storm and Pocket Kingdom. Own the world." Yay! But in the N-Gage that I found in the drawer was a copy of The Sims Bustin' Out.
Oh
Ooh,
man.
Yes. So that is the
Damn, son.
that's my glorious N-Gage library. So this is the only game.
I know what somebody's getting for their birthday.
Yay! This is the only game we're gonna spend any actual time, but I'm gonna ask Dan to keep it short, keep it sweet. June of 2008, PlayStation 3 exclusive. I bought this game before I bought a PlayStation 3. Because that's how big of a Metal Gear Solid fan I was. I said, no, I'll get a PS3 eventually. This game, Collector's Edition, gotta have day one, no matter what. June 2008, Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. Dean and Dan, go.
No. No. No, I don't want to fucking talk about this game. I don't want to talk about the movie I watched. No, about episodic movies. It was like watching 4 Sherlock episodes in a row, probably more. And Dan, I know you love it, but I fucking disagree with you. And I don't care if you call me
do.
wrong. I'm calling you wrong. There's so much fucking wrong with that game. Fuck that game. Ugh. Go ahead.
Okay, so I pre-ordered this game, which I don't do very often because pre-orders are stupid. But I pre-ordered this game from a GameStop in Orlando, Florida, when I was living in Orlando at the time. And the day it came out, I went to pick up the game, and I had only pre-ordered the regular one because I ain't fancy. And they handed me the special collector's edition that came with a whole bunch of extra shit. And the guy just, like, I had pre-ordered it and paid it off. Right, so I was just handing him my receipt, he was handing me the game, and I was walking out of the store. So he handed me the special collector's edition, and I ran out of the store before he realized his mistake. So I got the extra special edition, which was like $20 more or something like that, and came with an art book. I don't even fucking remember what it came with at this point. But, so, yeah, thank you, Orlando GameStop, for hiring brain-dead Floridians to work in your stores. The game itself, I am not going to even attempt to get into the story here. Because Dean is right. It is very much an interactive movie. But the parts of the game that you do get to play, which are somewhat few and far between, are so wonderfully realized, especially when you play the game in the first-person mode, which I never thought I would be into. But shooting in that game and being able to pick off your enemies, like, most of the time when I play through a Metal Gear game, I understand I'm supposed to be playing it as a stealth game, and I try to be as stealthy as possible, but eventually it hits a point where I'm like, fuck it, machine gun. In this game, with the new aiming system that they implemented, I went through this game with the silencer the entire time and was able to just pick people off and feel like an unbelievable badass. The gameplay mechanics are so good in this game. They are so well done. The story is fucking insane, and Old Snake is a really interesting character with a really terrible mustache.
A really amazing mustache.
Well, yes, but it's also really, really
Very
terrible.
It rivaled Tom Selleck.
It is a Magnum PI mustache. I fucking love this game, and to really, like, the ending sequence of this game, like, after you beat the final boss, is like 45 minutes of just an interactive movie, and everything is laid out, and everything is explained. And I thought, until we got what is coming later this year with Metal Gear Solid, The Phantom Pain, this was the perfect ending to this series. Nothing else needed to be done with it, because for all the ridiculousness that this story is, they explained it. It took them a long time, but they did explain it.
They wrapped it up. They wrapped up all the loose ends, but no, they could not let things lie. So here we go. March 2009, exclusively for mobile phones, Metal Gear Solid Touch, which is pretty much just a shooting gallery version of Metal Gear Solid 4. Really neat looking tech at the time for a mobile game, but
Yep, didn't play that either.
Good, probably good plan. I skipped over Metal Gear Online, which is basically the multiplayer mode in Metal Gear Solid 4, except in Japan it had a standalone only release, which was adorable.
Good for you, Japan.
Good for you, Japan. Then comes June 2010. The PSP finally gets that Metal Gear Solid game they've always wanted with Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. It was a decent Metal Gear Solid game. I bought it. I bought the collector's edition because up until this point, I had every U.S. released Metal Gear game. And I have almost all of them still. But yeah, Peace Walker. Pretty decent game.
Peace Walker's great.
Good times.
I mean, for what it is everything that you had always wanted Metal Gear on a PlayStation Portable system to be.
Yeah, except I really wanted it on my TV instead, which was a big problem with a lot of PSP games. Like,
I didn't want it on my PlayStation Portable
Yeah,
system. I wanted it on the screen.
yeah, which eventually it was put on the screen, just like the God of War games that came out for it. Like, they were
Right,
good games, but they weren't portable. You know, they didn't.
Right.
I didn't want to play it in short bursts. I wanted to sit down and play it. Like they felt big, and Peace Walker had a similar situation.
Peace Walker is the type of game where if you were to make an argument for why things like the PS Vita TV should exist, the God of War games, even though they were released on disc eventually or as like digital downloads, but
Yep.
Peace Walker, things like that, you can now play them on a television with the PS Vita TV. And that is really is the way to play that game.
Yeah, it's just a weird decision, but they did it. All those years later, finally we got that game that you were looking for. Yay, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. December of 2010, Japan only, Metal Gear Arcade. The less we say about this, the better. Let's see. For between 2011 and 2012, you got Metal Gear Solid HD Collection and Ultimate HD Collection, which are
What?
exactly what they sound like. Are you okay, Dean?
Ultimate. I must have it.
It is the Ultimate HD Collection. It's not just an HD; it's an ultimate HD.
What makes it more ultimate than the other one?
It's the
Oh, you
There
know.
you know.
Lightning bolts.
racing
I don't-
stripes.
Racing. Oh, fancy, real fucking fancy.
Solid Snake walks around the whole game with a white T-shirt with an exclamation point on it. What could possibly go wrong?
If you have never played these games, by the way, these are the versions to get. They are HD remasters. They're awesome.
Really, really well done. But there's not a whole lot to say about them because they are just re-releases in HD. So, moving on to yet another re-release, February of 2012, a very interesting and very well done portable rendition of Metal Gear Solid 3 in the form of Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater 3D for the Nintendo 3DS. Really a technically impressive thing. This game makes really impressive use of the 3D effect on the 3DS. If you have a 3DS, you should have this game. It's a wonderful game to begin with. It plays very well. It actually takes advantage of the Circle Pad Pro if you're one of the 8 people that owns one. And it's a damn fine game. I recommend it. Let's see. December of 2012 on mobile phones in Japan only. Metal Gear Solid Social Ops.
I hate it already. Please just keep going.
That is the sound of all of us fighting back the bile. Then Metal Gear gets introduced to an entire different kind of crazy in February of 2013 for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and then in 2014 for the PC and OS X, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance.
Yeah. That
It's
happened.
not terrible.
No, it's not
It's
terrible.
not a Metal Gear Solid
Yeah.
game,
It's Samurai.
but that was and I think that was the problem that a lot of people had with it, because I read reviews when the game came out and I message board posts and internet chatter. People were like, this isn't anything like Metal Gear Solid.
That's why it's
You're
called
right.
Metal
It
Gear
is-
Rising.
That's right. It is a lot like Metal Gear Rising, though.
It is. This is a
The sword play was cool. You can do neat stuff. Raiden is still kind of a douche.
Yeah, he really sucks. But this is a Platinum Games joint, beginning, middle, and end. This is the this is the company that brought you Bayonetta, and it shows. It's great. I like this game a lot because it's not expected. It doesn't use the Metal Gear Solid name. It gives it its own subgenre, its own little category, and it was Konami saying, here, Platinum Games, you make really cool stuff. Why don't you do your take on the Metal Gear franchise? And they did, and it was bizarre and wonderful and action-packed and has nothing to do with anything. It's just this sheer ball of lunacy, and it was completely unnecessary. It's the Hyrule Warriors of the Metal Gear franchise.
Love it.
It really
is.
It really is. It really is fun.
Yeah, it's a great
Just
action
don't
game.
expect
Well, I love
don't
fun,
expect Metal
so
Gear Solid.
If you want samurais, go there. Samurai, ninja samurais.
Yeah, if you, I mean, just mute the all of the voices if possible, so you don't have to listen to Raiden speak or live, and just watch him do impossibly cool things with his sword and his feet, and the game's just cool. Moving on, July 2013 for the PlayStation 3. You thought the Ultimate HD Collection was where it was at, but no, Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection comes out, which is basically all the mainline games so far in glorious HD on your PlayStation 3.
The fuck out of here.
And really expensive.
Yeah, really expensive. And then we're into March of 2014 for PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. The full-price demo for The Phantom Pain, Metal Gear Solid 5, Ground Zeroes. Not since Gran Turismo 3 Prologue has there been a more
That was some bullshit.
and same here.
And so is
And
this.
so is this.
I still haven't played it,
I haven't either. Yeah.
which is really saying something, because the game I am most excited about in 2015 is The Phantom Pain. I am just curious could be as to what the hell they are going to do with this game, especially with all the crazy stuff that is going on with Kojima Productions being taken off of everything having to do with Konami at this point.
Being un-Kojima'd.
Yeah.
Right.
De-Kojimified.
I am so...
For the record, Dan, I don't know if I'm saying it right either. Like, it could very well be Kojima. I really don't know.
I usually say Kojima, but you've said Kojima.
Yeah,
you've influenced me.
It's my fault. I'm a jerk. I say things.
Well, no, that's true.
So we're just going to call him Mr. Kajimo. And Kajimo Productions, yeah, you're right. Like,
Satchmo.
what in the world is going on with that whole situation? It's very strange. But then again, everything relating to Kojima is very strange. God, that just reminded me of a really funny joke in... It was Metal Gear Solid 2 when you're at the end of the game and the thing's all bugging out and it does that weird trick with your TV. No, it was Metal Gear Solid 1. It was during the Psycho Mantis fight. And it tries to mess with your TV and make you think that it's like messing with the video signal, but instead of saying video on your screen, it says Hideo.
Yeah. Very funny. Yeah, Phantom Pain, I refuse to pay for Ground Zeroes because I'm relatively confident that it will either be included with the Phantom Pain or will be heavily discounted when it comes out. So I want the whole experience together. I do not want to play really because I don't trust them after Metal Gear Solid 2. I don't want to do a thing and then have to I want to be shocked and pissed off all at the same time if that's going to happen.
Agreed.
I feel it, man. Yeah. I feel you.
I feel you. It's also striking me as very unnecessary. Like you said, Metal Gear Solid 4, they finished this game. Like, none of this other stuff, none of the games we have read about since Metal Gear Solid 4 have been necessary. I'm glad Revengeance exists because it's fun and silly, but none of this other stuff is necessary. But yes, we've run extraordinarily long. This is going to be a hoot and holler for me to edit in some way, shape, or form. So... thank you very much for listening. Dean, very quick, abbreviated, do the thing.
Show notes! You said abbreviated.
Alright, that's pretty abbreviated.
Thank you, Jason, for suggesting this topic. If anybody else would like to suggest a future topic for another show, hit us up at geekade.com. Send in your suggestions. We'd love to hear from you.
Send your pictures to dear old Captain Noah. If you're old enough, you know what I'm talking about.
Jesus Christ.
Chris, end the show.
Ending the show right now. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, all three of you who may still be listening after what seems to be at least 2 hours of us droning on about Metal Gear. But we did it. We covered the entire franchise from beginning to end. So go us. Go team. I'm very proud of us all. Thanks, Dan and Dean, for joining us. Tiff, you were missed. I'm sorry if you even have to listen to this. I hope you're feeling better.
You're gonna have to edit a lot of this.
Yeah, this is gonna be tough. But yes,
go Team Venture.
Go Team Venture. See you guys next week for it'll be the first week of the month, and we're gonna be talking about our games of April. So we'll see you then. Have a great night.
I heard a funny joke today. I'll tell you later. It's not... No, I'll tell you now. Why doesn't Ken ever get Barbie pregnant?
Why?
Because he doesn't have any genitals.
Because he always comes in a different box.
End of the show, everyone. Have a good night.